have my dear friend Adrian here to share a little bit about his story with his son Arison. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Okay, sure. My name's Adrian. I'm a parent of an autistic boy. His name's Arison, as you said. He's just turned 12.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's been 12 pretty interesting years. I think interesting in the sense that it's been filled with challenges and a whole lot of rewards as well. And the challenges are not the challenges that I think an ordinary parent would experience, but the rewards are also not the kind of rewards that an ordinary parent gets to experience. So it's hard to say. It's a really hard road, but it's also a real blessing. Both of those things roll into one. You can't separate them. It's part of the package, part of the deal.
I think that's probably the most brilliant way anybody's ever put it. Tell us a little bit about how you found out about his diagnosis.
Okay, so I think things started out perfectly normally. Sort of hit all the milestones at 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. And then when it sort of got to the stage where you're kind of looking for speech to start happening, we started noticing that there wasn't a lot of that going on. And that, of course, alerts you to being sort of slightly more tuned to other things. And I think it was my wife who first noticed it and said, got a fascination with spinning things and flashing things like that. And it was a kind of like let's just see how it goes, and let's just go and chat to someone if things aren't progressing. Yeah. So we found somebody, a professional. We went along and said, "What's the story?" And they said we have to do a couple of tests, and we did a whole lot of. Is he hitting this milestone? Is he hitting this? And you go through piles and piles of paperwork, and then you go away and you just panic. You panic until you get an answer. And the answer was, he's not developing at the same rate on the same trajectory as an ordinary child. We would say he is at X months, and that was 6 to 8 months less than he was.
Okay.
And so we kind of figured there was something going on, and took it a little bit further. And they said, definitely autistic spectrum. And we just, it's too early to tell whether it's miles down the spectrum or it's sort of just like the early, kind of like just got a toe over the line.
Yeah.
And so, once we were alive to it, of course, you start noticing things a bit more. You read up a bit more. You do a little bit more research. You learn a little bit more. You speak to people. If you can find them, because that was our first difficulty, was that there's no easily accessible out there stuff. You have to look for it. You have to
especially here in South Africa.
You have to go looking. And so we did, and we then obviously went to see a neuropede who confirmed the diagnosis and gave it to us officially in writing that this is the case.
Okay.
But by then, we kind of were already working around what he needed. We were incredibly fortunate that we heard we got him into a play school, sort of for ordinary children, neurotypical children, and they were quite alive to the fact that he was possibly on the spectrum, and they also alerted us to the fact. And we found somebody who had just returned from working for several years in Ireland with autistic children. They'd come back to South Africa where they'd been raised and born and had lived. And so they started just seeing Arison once a week, and just helping us sort of guide us through the process of what we could be doing, because, and this is the first and most important thing we learned, was that the sooner you recognize the problem or the issue, and the sooner you start dealing with it, and the sooner you face up to it, the better it is for everybody, you as parents, in knowing what you're doing, but it is unbelievably important for your child to get the best that they can at the very earliest possible stage, because early intervention is absolutely key. It's just so valuable, and it's not massive stuff. It's just how you talk, what you do, the games you play, the exercises you do, the kinds of things that your child engages in, and now that's just where we took it from there.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So we had a few wobblies. I mean, there were the other thing to learn is that information about being an autistic parent and what to do was thin on the ground then. I mean, this is 11 years ago.
Sure.
I mean, it's much more available now, but still it's difficult to find. But also you realize that it's very, very complicated, because you can speak to 3 different people, all of whom are well qualified, who are experienced, and you'll get 3 different answers.
Yeah.
And so having to decide which route is the best possible path for your child becomes a very, very, very distressing thing, because you can be 100% sure that if you choose path A and turn your back on path B or C, and that they were the better options, you will live with the fact that you screwed it up.
Yeah.
And if you choose path B and path A would have been, but you don't know, because you can't do them simultaneously.
Because you don't know what you don't know.
And so we just took the advice of the most qualified person, and followed a particular option and a path, and it turned out to be very, very, very detrimental.
Oh wow.
And it was very difficult for a year, and eventually we took a decision, and it took a lot of courage to say we're going to just reject it completely.
Yeah.
We cannot go down this particular route.
Okay.
The people involved that were providing the treatment and therapy were absolutely wonderful, and I have absolutely no doubt that scientifically it is a good option for some children.
Sure.
But you know what the saying, once you've met one autistic child, you've met one autistic child. You know,
it's so true.
It's never going to be, just because it worked for 90% of the cases, it doesn't mean it will work for you.
Yeah.
And that was the point at which we discovered Action in Autism.
Okay.
Which is a non-profit organization operating out of KZN.
Yeah.
Which had an early learning intervention center, a very small little place. It's not really a school, it was exactly what it says, early learning intervention. Because early intervention is key.
Yeah.
It is about small groups, lots of therapists, and people who care
and
have knowledge, providing an environment. And they specifically aim at children from the ages of 2 up to 6.
And Arison was there from what age?
Arison was about 3, was 2 and a bit. And they said, yeah, bring him along. And so he started there, and it was a complete opposite to the path we'd gone before.
Sure.
Quite a bit of floor time orientated stuff. Quite a lot of, but above all else, it was about nurturing the child, as opposed to providing a rigid structure for the child. Structure is important, but a structure can be too rigid.
Yeah, not at the risk of.
And so the first little while there, it took quite a bit of work on their part, which they did unbelievably, to bring him out of the previous year's therapies and to set him on a path. And he stayed there until he was 6, because they provide the service up to 6.
Okay.
Because from 6 onwards, technically speaking, the educational system is supposed to provide. And so
school age.
Yeah. And so they were trying to provide they still do. They provide a service for children where there is no school service to help people at that critical juncture.
Yeah.
And so he moved on from there when he was 6, but I stayed involved in the sort of the school board and the intervention, the little school, you know, and the committee and stuff like that for, in fact, up until last year. So it is, and it is it's a wonderful organization, but it's not the only one. No. I mean, it's grown quite rapidly. It is a non-profit, so it's one of the few that isn't charging a market rate for people. Because the thing about autism is that it nails you irrespective of your socioeconomic bracket. And if you've got the money to afford therapists, your child gets a therapist. If you haven't, your child gets nothing at all. Absolutely nothing at all. There's no government provided support for children under the age of 6. So it's the NPOs that do it. And they've grown and grown and grown, and they have, I think, at least 34, 36, close to 40 children between 2 and 6.
Okay.
And on their in their school or in their interventions at any time.
Tell us about Arison. How would you describe him? What does he love? What does he dislike? How do you spend your afternoons? I know you have lots of extramural activities that you guys do.
Well, the extramural activities are designed to keep his parents sane and to develop him. So it's a double-edged sort of it's a double goal. Because you know, I think there's you know, people quote stats, but 90%, what is it? They say 97% of all stats are made up on the spot or something, you know?
87.6.
87.6, okay, we'll go with that. Okay. Raising an autistic child is equivalent of having, they say in a classroom, 6 neurotypical children or something like that. It's a stat, but and it's the same for the parent. You know, having an autistic child as a parent it's not the work of raising a child, it's the work of raising
an army
2,
of children,
3, 4, 5, whatever, you know. And also as a parent of an autistic child, you forget one critical thing, and you have to keep reminding yourself, is that you get everything that comes with your child being autistic, but also you get everything that comes with your child being a child.
Yes.
And you always forget that, and you say, oh, he's done X, Y, and Z, you know, is it because of this? And it's like, no, he's a 12-year-old. That's what they do.
Yeah.
It's like, I've forgotten I don't know what 12-year-olds do. I know what an autistic child does, so you attribute
it's a
everything
double
to the
whammy.
autism, but actually it's just the hard work of raising a child plus everything else. So he's physically busy, okay, but that's partially our fault, because we did not want him to become a child that lay on a couch.
Yeah.
And so from a very early age, we encouraged him in doing physical activity, because part of the interventions were not just OT with regard to sensory integration, not just OT with regard to speech and communication, but also with regard to fine motor skills, gross motor skills, all of those things which, you know, we took for granted as kids, climbing trees, falling out of trees, kicking a football around, or kicking a tennis ball around a football field at school break, and, you know, tearing clothes and stuff. And that's all gross motor skill development. And an autistic child is not at a school where there's a tennis ball to kick around in the break and cheese to go and climb and all the rest of it. And so you kind of got to persuade them to do that. And so from an early age, we just encourage that. So he climbs trees, he climbs poles, he climbs whatever he can climb. He'll climb, including, you know, burglar guards up to the ceiling, you know, and then he'll jump off them because it's fun to see. And that's all kind of like also neurotypical behavior. People remind you, oh no, you've got an 11-year-old. Of course they're going to be up in the tree. And then I think to myself, how often I fell out of a tree at 11, you know. But so we inculcated that in an early stage, and he hasn't lost it. So he absolutely loves being in the water. So so he's been water safe since 1. Yeah. And he loves it. I mean, he loves being in any water. So if you go for a drive in the Midlands and you stop at a cafe for lunch, and you turn around and Arison is in the dam, and maybe the Labrador that belongs to the place is there with him. You know. Yeah. If you go to the beach, he will want to be the one furthest out, and you think to yourself, look, you know, not even the surface have gone that far. You've got to try and get him back. Take him to the berg. He has almost zero temperature regulation, like we know it. So he will swim in any berg stream and relish it, no matter how cold it is. So that's just it. So the swimming pool, he swims until June, gets back into it by the beginning of August. You know, so he gets its use. And
he loves water.
And it's an all-enveloping environment. You forget that it's not just a child enjoying the water, an autistic child. For him, it's about that constant hug. Yes. You know, you get a hug from a friend and you get squeezed. Imagine you've got your clothes on and you jump into the pool. How those clothes get wet and
cling to you,
constrict around you and cling to you. Yeah, that's what he does. So if he's had a bit of a rough night and he's woken up and he's feeling a little bit discombobulated, he'll walk out and he'll jump in the pool in his pajamas. And of course, it would be, most parents would tear their hair out, but it's just, for us, it's just, well, you know, he's just got that cling feel, that dose of cold. Yes. He gets out, and then he'll come in and he'll take his pajamas off and he'll hang them on the rack, and we'll give him a towel and he'll get dressed and have breakfast. So it's kind of, it's a therapy and it's an activity and it's just a kid having fun in the water. You know,
and you've traveled all over the world with him, haven't you?
Yeah, we decided, you know, good or bad, I mean, people may or may not judge us, but we decided that just because we had an autistic child was not a reason to change the parts of our lifestyle that were important to us for our mental and physical well-being. And one of those things, especially for my wife, is traveling. And so we thought, well, we're not going to put a lid on traveling anywhere ever again, because he's never going to not be autistic. So let's travel with him from an early age so that it becomes something that he's familiar with, so that it's not a hurdle that he has to overcome and a fear he has to conquer. And so we took him from when he was young. I think he first traveled with us when he was under 1. And he's been all over with us. We've been to some weird and wonderful places. I mean, I don't think there's many 12-year-olds in Durban who've been to Bhutan or to Laos.
Yeah, I don't think so.
And various other places. And he loves traveling. Yeah. So he'll get into the airplane and he'll find a seat and he'll buckle up and he'll make sure that we put our things on, and you know, and he's got his traveling technique settled. You know. It becomes challenging if the flight is several hours.
Yeah.
But yeah, so he travels and he does that sort of stuff with us. And yeah, you know, I'm sure that very early trips he probably doesn't have a conscious memory of, but certainly for the last 8 or 9 years, he's very familiar with where he's been. He'll talk about the places. And yeah, so, but we travel now with a kind of like a slightly complicated agenda. You know, so you've got a destination that mom and dad like, which of course could be different things, but the destination has to include things that Arison likes.
Such as?
You have to make sure that wherever we go, there's somewhere he can swim.
Of course.
Because if we can find a place where we're going to see a city, okay, the noise and the traffic and the sound and the lights and the people and the buzz become very, very quickly overwhelming for an autistic child.
Of course.
And you can't expect him to spend all day with earphones on or headphones on or something. So we find a place where first thing in the morning we can get up, and we can go and have a swim. And then he's had a good swim, he's good to go for the rest of the day. We can do a whole lot of stuff that we can do as a family. And then early afternoon we'll go and find somewhere else to go and have a swim. So any place with a beach, any place with swimming pools, you know. So I mean, you know, if you go to Spain, you can go down to the beach 3 times a day until 10 o'clock at night, and he's in heaven. If you go somewhere where it's freezing cold, make sure that there's hot springs. So you can go swim in the hot springs, which is what he did when we were traveling recently. So we kind of do that kind of thing, and then we also try and make sure that there's a museum that Dad desperately wants to see, but there's also a playground with a fun fair which has got X, Y, and Z rides, which we'll take him on. So in my youth, I travelled to different countries and cities to enjoy museums of art, and now as a 50-something-year-old, I've travelled to different cities and countries to enjoy
swimming pools
and merry-go-rounds, Ferris wheels. You know, anything that moves fast and spins you around and all the rest of it. So I've begun to explore roller coasters.
What do you want new parents to know if they are kind of starting out on a journey, or they've just found out they have an autism diagnosis? What hope can you give them?
Well, the first thing is what not to do. You know, it's not what to do, it's what not to do. And don't give up. Don't get despondent. Don't think, oh, hell, what am I going to do now? You know, because all of those are kind of immediately put you on the back foot. You know, and you're on the back foot with respect to the fact that part of your child's autistic. You know, but you should be on the front foot for everything about your child, including the autistic bits. So say, right, he's autistic. You know, I'm not going to change that. But I can do a whole lot of stuff that's going to make it better for him and for me and for all of us in the long run, and it starts now. So you just say there is absolutely nothing you can do to change what you're starting with. But there's a huge amount you can do to change the direction it goes. So if you say, oh God, I can't deal with it, I don't know what to do, and you dither and you vacillate and you get depressed about it, it's going to be 10 times worse in 2 years' time, or 3 years' time, or 4 years' time.
So it's quite active, actually.
Just get started. You know, and the sooner you get started, the more natural those activities become. So you say we have a full life, a busy life with Arison. That's because and I said it works for the parents too. So instead of trying to rack our brains for what to do every afternoon, every day of the week, trying to find activities that keep them off the screen. And then again, we have to remind ourselves that for an autistic child with attention issues, being on the screen is a big problem. We have to remind ourselves it's a big problem for any child. So don't just despair that because he's autistic. You know. So we have to think of things to do. And you say, oh, there's just so many books I can read to him when he's not interested in listening to me, and just so many times he can jump in the pool. So if you've got structured things to do in the afternoons after school and you do them, it helps you as a parent structure your time, gives you things to do. But they're things that we set up from a long time ago. So he goes to like a horse riding therapy once a week, and he has for the last 3 or 4, maybe 5 years. I mean, since before COVID. And that's feels like yesterday, but it was 25 years ago.
Yeah.
You know, so he's been doing that.
Yeah.
So I know that and it's at the moment it's a Tuesday. Every Tuesday afternoon, get him home from school, have lunch, say, Arison, get your riding clothes, and you'll go and you find his shoes and his boot and his socks and all the rest of it, bring him, and off we go.
Yeah.
And I get to sit in a green field and watch him go riding and have a break, and we do that together, and that gives us something to do.
Yeah.
And it's something that's beneficial for him, good for us.
Yeah.
So swimming, riding, going to art therapy, you know, various other things, and you set them up, and they are good for your child, any child, but specifically a sort of a neurodiverse child who's going to have, but they're also good for you as a parent to have those kinds of things in place. And also, this is what's critical, is that every single one of those activities that you involve your child in with one of those people, is your child is not the first autistic child that they have seen.
Yeah.
So just in chatting to them, they can say, well, I'm trying this with Arison today because I've done it several times before with other children and it's worked. And you think, I'd never thought of that. And so you learn, but also it works to their benefit. So that's absolutely vital, because then all of a sudden you don't feel like you're the first person facing this, you're the only one. So what we have got is that all of his therapists have formed a WhatsApp group.
Oh, wow.
So his OT and his tutor, art therapist, his swimming coach, his horse riding lady, who's it's hippotherapy, not horse riding. It's all of them are on a WhatsApp group. And so if one of them experiences something with Arison, they will put it on the group and say, we had the most amazing session today where we did X, Y, and Z. And the others will pick up and say, okay, so he's hitting this particular milestone here. Let me integrate that into my speech therapy class, Or one will say, I'm having a problem with Arison because he's doing this. Is anybody finding this? And somebody, oh yeah, I did, but I got over it by doing that. And so they just, they have they're a team, you know.
That's amazing.
And it's just, and you as a parent don't have to be part of that. You can be if you want to, but in some ways I'm not a part of it, and nor is my wife. But they'll tell us, they all talk to us. But it's a way of them as a team supporting each other, and learning off each other's experiences. So they don't just get the hour with Arison as their input. They get the hour with Arison as their input, but against a backdrop of the benefit that all of the others have got that week.
That's
that
incredible.
and it works really nicely.
Yeah.
You know? And it just means that the therapy is coordinated.
You
know, they're not overlapping things and doing the same thing, which bores them to tears.
Yeah.
And they're building on what each other are doing.
Yeah.
So that's also quite a useful thing to know. So my advice is just say, right, you know, it's going to take a bit of work now. It's like investing. You know, put the effort in, because it's going to be better for you later.
Okay. And what are your long-term hopes for him, if I can ask? It's a big one, I know.
I don't know, but I mean, that's impossible for a parent to answer for any child.
Yeah,
you know? And I think your hopes for your children change as you change.
Sure.
So I want him to be happy and to live what he considers to be a fulfilling life for the rest of his life. Not what I consider to be fulfilling, and not what you consider to be fulfilling, and certainly not what society considers to be fulfilling.
Right.
He does not have to become a CEO in a company, make lots of money and tread on people left, right and center and destroy the environment to be regarded as successful like 98% of the people.
Yeah.
97.6 of the people in the world. He does not have to become a philanthropist. He does not have to work for an NGO. It's not what I want to do for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
It's what will make him happy and fulfilled for the rest of his. I don't want him to die young. I don't want him to die alone. I don't want him to die unfulfilled. I don't want him to die unhappy. I don't want him to die, cast aside.
Yeah.
He must be somewhere where he is looked after and loved, or where he can be a part of a society which looks after and loves people.
Okay.
You know? So in other words, very narrow gap to aim for. But that's basically what it boils down to. You know, the old days of you get a job, you hold on to it the rest of your life, you retire, you take your pension, you run your garden. It's not what it's about.
No.
He must do and what makes them happy may not be what I would even think of.
Yeah.
And it's a long way to knowing what that will be.
Yeah.
But as long as, and it's very difficult to find out what makes a person happy, especially an autistic child who doesn't tell you.
Yes. That is one of the biggest challenges.
That is the real challenge, is that people say, oh, your child's autistic, he must be brilliant at maths. And it's like, well, 1 in every 10 million is brilliant at maths. And what about the other 9.9 million?
Yeah.
What are they good at?
Yeah.
Counting the calendar backwards, that's rubbish.
Yeah.
You may never know what it is that your child is brilliant at.
But I think one of the things you guys are good at is learning about him. Yes. And exploring the world through his eyes. So what are some of the things that have surprised you about him or about people with autism in general? Have there been, I mean, you said there's blessings, there's challenges.
So the most, it's not a surprising thing, but it comes as a slow, is there such a thing as a slow surprise?
Yeah.
I suppose it's an ongoing realization.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's hard for a cynical person to understand, and somebody who's got a background in law and has seen the misery that constitute the lives of the clients of lawyers and lawyers themselves, is that, and especially in this world where we see so much misery and so much hate, is that it's hard to come to terms with the fact that autistic children, autistic people, but certainly my experiences with autistic children, are completely, totally and utterly without guile, without maliciousness, without spite.
Yeah.
They're as close to pure as you can be.
Yeah.
They will do things that will make you angry. They will do things that break things. They will do things that just don't make sense socially. They will do things that just aren't acceptable in some people's eyes. But they will never, ever, ever do it motivated by spite, hatred, or any other desire to hurt.
Yeah, yeah.
They do. It's absolutely remarkable. They are as close to angels on earth as you can find, because they lack that basic, disgusting human trait of hurting.
Yeah.
And doing that kind of thing. So that is, and it's not an easy thing to understand, because we're not conditioned to understand it.
Yeah.
And to see it, and we're certainly not conditioned to reward it. And I don't think many people are even conditioned to appreciate it. But that's what they're about. And once you come to that surprising realization, A, it helps when you're dealing with the things that they do.
Yeah.
But B, it is actually something. It's an unbelievable. What the blessing is probably not the right word, but it's an unbelievable gem to have. It's just it's a very precious thing.
Yeah, so I think that's a beautiful thing.
Yeah, it's not.
I think it also helps people who aren't in the autistic community understand them a little bit better. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, but you see, that's the thing, is that people who are not in the autistic community's interactions are often not prolonged enough for them to start seeing that kind of thing.
Yes.
It's a bump in a supermarket queue where they scream at your child because they did something and push them out the way to get to somewhere. And so you can say, my child's autistic, and they'll say, oh, that explains the bad behavior. It's like, actually, number one, it's not bad behavior.
No.
Only because you think it is. Number two, it doesn't explain it. And number three, actually, what you really need to understand is that they didn't push you out the way because they've been nasty. They just weren't cognizant of your presence there because they are thinking about something else.
They focused on...
Or because they're playing Boney M. Christmas carols again, and it drives him mad, and he's trying to hide under a trolley, or he's lying underneath the fridge at the Checkers because it's the only place where there's some cool and a hum which drowns out whatever, so don't, So I think it would help people if they would open their minds to it.
And try and understand our kids, and I'm lumping Ollie in here, from the context of their experience of the world, and not forcing our kids to conform to a neurotypical person's experience of the world.
Ollie, and I know that Ollie, like Arison, he won't do something motivated by a desire to be spiteful.
No.
It might be infuriating, but it isn't done on purpose.
Yeah. And
you have to realize that.
Yeah.
But the general public don't have enough knowledge of it and don't understand it.
Yeah.
Some do. Now and again you come across people who do, and it's wonderful. But almost always, it comes with, and this is also wonderful, it comes with, yeah, my cousin's child was autistic, so I know a little bit. And then all of a sudden they open up and it smiles, and
Yes.
So there is a bit of that.
Yeah.
And I think that a bit more public awareness wouldn't go awry. But we live in a society, our particular little echelon of it, where there is that slightly sort of growing awareness. But I think that lots of autistic children are still raised in areas where that's not yet understood.
The case,
so they have a very rough time.
Yeah, well, it's conversations like this that kind of bring a little bit more awareness to the public.
Well,
we hope.
We hope, yeah. Hope so.
And for people to understand the context and the environment that our kids grow up in, and that's why we do what we do. Yeah. So thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it. I think sharing stories is incredibly powerful, not only to help the people who are kind of new to the journey, but maybe to help teachers, therapists, other friends, community members reframe how they think about our children's experience of life.
Yeah, or how they look at them.
Yeah, exactly.
Even if it's just one little bit of how they look at them.
Exactly.
Them,
yeah. So thank you very much.
It's a pleasure. Thank you.
Hi, thanks for watching this week's episode of Unlocking Hope. If you want to find out more about me, you can see my socials on screen or my website in the comments below. And if you're looking for a way to give back into a community, you can check out Kanisa Developmental Centre. Their details are also below, and it's a great way to give back into the community.